preparation and experience can only compensate so much. When hikers push beyond established limits and ignore warnings, the margin for error narrows rapidly. Today, we're breaking down 5 incidents where adventurers relied on skill instead of boundaries, and small miscalculations led to fatal outcomes. It was May 18, 2015, at Everest Base Camp, elevation 17,598 feet. The morning was cold and still, with climbers moving deliberately through routine gear checks as preparations for the day continued. Tristan Keaton had arrived in Nepal 3 weeks earlier with a basic backpack and minimal equipment, which he documented in recorded videos. The 24-year-old Portland native had previously worked as a personal trainer and later developed a lifestyle-focused online following with 8,500 devoted followers who funded his adventures through crowdfunding campaigns. His online content focused on endurance challenges and unconventional outdoor practices, including barefoot winter camping in Oregon, month-long raw food diets, and now his most ambitious project yet. Tristan claimed that expensive mountaineering gear represented nothing more than corporate manipulation designed to instill fear and dependency in consumers. His Everest expedition, funded entirely through a campaign that raised $47,000, was presented in campaign materials as a test of mental endurance under extreme conditions. Tristan documented everything through his phone camera, from his arrival at base camp wearing flip-flops and a cotton hoodie to his responses when other climbers offered advice regarding altitude, weather, and footwear. He had already completed 2 successful acclimatization hikes to 18,000 feet, filming himself laughing off the mild headaches and nausea that accompanied oxygen deprivation. In these videos, Tristan stated that he believed mountaineering risks were exaggerated by commercial equipment companies. The weather forecast for May 18th included sustained winds of 40 miles per hour and a temperature drop to -15 Fahrenheit, conditions that prompted most expedition teams to postpone their acclimatization hikes. Tristan proceeded with plans to ascend despite the forecasted conditions. His climbing partner, Liam Renner, a paying client with proper boots and layers, reluctantly agreed to accompany him after disagreement over whether to delay the ascent. Tristan spent the morning filming preparation segments about trusting your body's natural adaptation mechanisms, while other climbers packed additional gear and delayed their departures. The ascent began at 6 a.m. under clear skies that quickly gave way to driving wind and snow. Tristan maintained his cheerful commentary for the first hour, even as his exposed toes began losing sensation and his cotton hoodie absorbed moisture from his perspiration. By hour 2, he stumbled repeatedly on the rocky terrain, attributing his unsteadiness to the weight of his camera equipment. Liam documented Tristan's increasingly erratic behavior and slurred speech, though Tristan continued insisting that his mental strength was overcoming the mountain's challenges. At 19,200 feet, Tristan encountered a section of blue ice, the compressed, glass-like surface that forms when glacier ice undergoes extreme pressure. His right sandal caught an ice edge, while his left foot slid backward across the slick surface. While holding his phone, Tristan lost balance and fell backward. Tristan struck his head against a protruding ice formation. Mark, positioned approximately 50 feet upslope, later reported hearing the impact. Tristan's body slid 15 feet down the slope before catching against a fixed climbing rope, leaving a trail of blood that steamed briefly in the frigid air before freezing solid. Liam reached him within 4 minutes, finding Tristan conscious but disoriented, with visible bleeding from the head and ears and shallow breathing. Despite Mark's attempts at emergency first aid and immediate radio calls for helicopter evacuation, Tristan became unresponsive within minutes of the fall, as his condition deteriorated rapidly. The coroner's report identified severe basilar skull fracture with extensive brain hemorrhaging as the primary cause of death, complicated by advanced hypothermia and severe cold-related injury to both feet. Tristan's phone was recovered from the site and contained video recorded earlier that morning at base camp. Authorities concluded that the fatal injury resulted from a fall on exposed ice during an ascent conducted without appropriate protective equipment. If these breakdowns help you understand how small decisions turn deadly in the mountains, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It directly supports more reporting like this. Now let's move to the next incident. Far below the base camp, another climber prepared for a risky leap over the quarry's edge. It was September 15th, 2015, at Maiden Rock Quarry in Wisconsin. The late afternoon was overcast and windy, with visitors moving carefully along the quarry edge as others adjusted cameras and equipment for jumps. Derek Alden and his creative partner, Lila Donovan, had built their YouTube channel to 8,000 subscribers through increasingly dangerous stunts funded by energy drink sponsorships and athletic wear partnerships. Jake, 23, had dropped out of marketing school to pursue full-time content creation, while Lila, 25, left her job as a physical therapist to join him. Their revenue depended entirely on maintaining viewer engagement through escalating risks, with sponsors like Red Zone Energy and Apex Gear providing monthly payments contingent on hit targets and brand integration requirements. The quarry presented unique technical challenges that most amateur jumpers underestimated. The limestone walls contained irregular ledges and protruding rocks that created unpredictable wind currents, while the landing zone measured only 30 feet across, surrounded by submerged boulders and metal debris from the quarry's operational period. Professional cliff divers required extensive training to account for rotation, entry angle, and the precise timing needed to avoid serious injury. Derek and Lila had completed solo jumps from this location twice before, but their sponsor had specifically requested synchronized footage for an upcoming energy drink campaign launching in October. The planned stunt involved both creators jumping simultaneously from adjacent positions, spreading their arms mid-fall to create a dramatic thumbnail image before entering synchronized dives. Weather conditions had deteriorated throughout the afternoon, with gusting winds reaching 25 miles per hour and storm cells approaching from the west. Video and text records indicate both were aware of the approaching storm, and both proceeded with the planned jumps. Two friends, Gideon Marsh and Ivy Prescott, positioned themselves with cameras at multiple angles to capture both the wide shot and close-up perspectives required for editing. The countdown began at 4:47 p.m. as both creators positioned themselves 12 feet apart along the quarry's edge. Jake's jump timing lagged approximately half a second behind Lila's, causing him to encounter the wind gust that caught her mid-fall and pushed her lateral trajectory 2 feet to the right. Lila's head contacted a limestone ledge, and Jake's body struck the rock face before entering the water. Gideon reported hearing an impact when Lila's head struck the rock. Jake's body hit the rock face twice during his descent, his left leg bending at an impossible angle against a ledge before he tumbled into the water, unconscious. Lila's head struck the limestone ledge, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Derek entered the water unconscious and was later pronounced dead. Gideon called 911 at 4:48 p.m., but emergency responders required 43 minutes to reach the remote location and retrieve both bodies. The coroner determined Lila died from massive skull fracture and brain trauma, while Derek died from drowning complicated by multiple bone fractures and internal bleeding. Both deaths were ruled accidental with contributing factors of environmental conditions and inadequate safety planning. Investigators recovered helmet and ground cameras, which documented the sequence of the jumps and confirmed timing of the impacts. They noted that sponsorship and platform involvement did not contribute to the incident. The focus remained on the accident mechanics and safety factors. Elsewhere, high on Everest's icefall, another adventurer tested the limits of climbing equipment under deadly conditions. It was April 23, 2018, at the Khumbu Icefall on Mount Everest. The early morning was cold and dark, with climbers moving carefully across ladders and ice while others checked equipment and ropes. Jade Monroe had built a profitable YouTube channel with approximately 9,000 subscribers by testing outdoor equipment in extreme conditions. The 29-year-old former software engineer from Seattle had leveraged his technical skills and willingness to risk personal safety into sponsorship deals with an outdoor equipment company and a climbing gear manufacturer. His revenue model depended on exclusive first-look reviews of prototype equipment, often receiving gear months before public release, in exchange for detailed technical analysis and real-world stress testing that manufacturers use to refine their products. Contracts reviewed by investigators in Ecuadorian later showed that delivery deadlines were tied to competitor release schedules rather than environmental conditions. The Khumbu Icefall presented unique technical challenges that made it an ideal testing ground for ice climbing equipment. The glacier moved approximately 3 feet daily, creating constantly shifting crevasses and unstable ice formations that required specialized gear, including crampons, ice axes, and harnesses rated for dynamic loading. Fixed lines, aluminum ladders, and anchors were repositioned daily by icefall doctors to account for overnight movement. Jade wore climbing boots from a small startup gear company, which had paid him for exclusive review rights to their carbon fiber crampon integration system. Designed to embed metal spikes directly into the boot sole, the design eliminated traditional strap or clip-on crampons in favor of a bonded structural interface intended to reduce weight and improve energy transfer. The planned route through the icefall typically required 6 hours to complete, but unseasonably warm temperatures had accelerated glacier movement and created new hazards overnight. Expedition leaders had issued warnings about increased rockfall and serac collapse, recommending that teams delay passage until conditions improved. Several commercial teams postponed their rotations that morning, choosing to remain at base camp despite favorable visibility. Jade ignored these advisories after pressure from the startup to complete his review before a competitor's launch. His filming assistant, guide Pemba Sherpa, expressed concerns but ultimately accompanied him after additional payment. Expedition logs later noted that the ascent occurred outside the recommended crossing window due to rising temperatures after sunrise. The ascent began smoothly, with Jade documenting the boot's performance across various ice conditions, while Pemba managed rope systems and route finding. By 7:15 a.m., they had successfully navigated 12 ladder crossings and reached 18,900 feet elevation when Jade paused to film a detailed segment about crampon penetration in hard ice. Video footage later recovered showed repeated close-up shots of the sole interface under load. He positioned himself on a seemingly stable platform above a narrow crevasse, describing the boot's grip characteristics while demonstrating aggressive footwork techniques. Pemba remained anchored 15 feet away, managing the safety rope that connected them. The failure occurred without warning as Jade shifted his weight during a pivot maneuver designed to showcase the crampon's lateral stability. The carbon fiber integration system fractured along its mounting interface, separating the crampon completely from the left boot sole. Post-incident analysis identified stress concentration along the bonding seam, exacerbated by cold-induced material brittleness. The sudden loss of purchase caused Jade to fall backward toward the crevasse edge, his arms windmilling frantically, while his right crampon caught momentarily on ice before also failing. Pemba lunged forward, but the safety rope went taut too late to arrest David's fall. The dynamic load exceeded the anchor's holding position rather than its rated strength. Jade plummeted 180 feet into the crevasse, his body bouncing twice against the narrow ice walls before wedging between converging surfaces 40 feet from the bottom. Pemba's immediate radio calls brought rescue teams within 3 hours, but technical difficulties accessing the cramped crevasse delayed body recovery for an additional 6 hours. Rescuers found David's phone still clutched in his right hand, displaying a partially completed video review documenting the boot's prototype crampon system, recorded minutes before the failure. The coroner determined death resulted from massive internal trauma, including ruptured organs and multiple bone fractures, consistent with high-impact collision against ice. The prototype gear company recalled all boots and ceased operations. Independent engineers later concluded the design had not undergone sufficient cyclic load testing under sub-zero conditions. David's channel remains active under his estate's management, with content preserved for safety education purposes. The failed boot design was never brought to market. Miles away on a higher ridge, another climber began a staged scenario that would quickly turn real. It was October 12, 2016, on the northeast ridge of Mount Everest at 26,400 feet. The early morning was cold and still, with climbers checking equipment and adjusting breathing apparatus, while others moved carefully across the ice and rock. Marcus Fenwick, 31, had been documenting extreme stunts online for a small audience of a few thousand followers. He specialized in staged emergency scenarios, including simulated injuries and survival challenges in high-altitude environments. His focus was on creating content that appeared dangerous while remaining under controlled conditions. Death zone mountaineering presented unique physiological challenges that made survival dependent on rapid ascent and descent protocols. Above 26,000 feet, atmospheric pressure drops to approximately 1/3 of sea level conditions. forcing climbers to use supplemental oxygen systems while their bodies gradually shut down from cellular damage caused by extreme hypoxia. Medical briefings provided to Everest expeditions consistently warn that decision-making capacity degrades rapidly at this elevation, often without the climber recognizing the decline. Helicopter operations at this altitude approach the absolute limits of aircraft performance, requiring perfect weather conditions and exceptional pilot skill. Flight windows are often measured in minutes, with wind speed, visibility, and air density determining whether lift is even possible. Marcus had hired a specialized high-altitude helicopter crew for $75,000 to capture footage of his planned fake emergency, scheduling the filming during a period of favorable weather conditions. The staged rescue scenario involved Marcus simulating a severe ankle injury that would require helicopter evacuation, with Derek documenting his apparent distress while maintaining radio contact with the aircraft crew positioned at base camp. Weather conditions began deteriorating rapidly after their arrival, with wind speeds increasing to 40 miles per hour and visibility dropping due to approaching snow squalls. The helicopter pilot advised postponing the filming due to unsafe flying conditions, but Marcus insisted on proceeding after calculating that delaying would cost him the optimal upload slot before competing channels released similar content. Marcus began his performance at 11:30 a.m., removing his outer insulation layers and oxygen mask to appear more vulnerable while Derek filmed from multiple angles. The exposure was intentional, meant to heighten visual realism for viewers unfamiliar with altitude risk. The planned scenario called for 30 minutes of footage showing escalating hypothermia symptoms before the dramatic helicopter rescue sequence. Within 15 minutes, Marcus's core body temperature began dropping rapidly as the combination of high altitude, extreme cold, and removed protective equipment created genuine hypothermia conditions. His shivering intensified, but Derek continued filming, unaware that the situation had become life-threatening. Audio captured labored breathing and intermittent coughing as oxygen deprivation compounded the heat loss. By the 40-minute mark, Marcus had progressed into moderate hypothermia with confusion, slurred speech, and uncontrolled muscle contractions. His skin turned blue-gray, while his breathing became increasingly shallow, but Derek remained focused on capturing dramatic footage, rather than recognizing medical emergency symptoms. Later analysis noted that these signs matched textbook indicators of advanced cold stress rather than simulated performance. The helicopter crew, monitoring weather conditions from base camp, determined that flying had become impossible due to deteriorating visibility and dangerous wind shear at altitude. Marcus lost consciousness at 12:47 p.m., while Derek finally realized the situation had become genuinely life-threatening and activated emergency protocols. Ground-based rescue teams required 8 hours to reach their location, finding Marcus deceased from severe hypothermia and exposure. Jake's footage documented the entire progression from staged performance to actual medical emergency. The coroner determined death resulted from hypothermia and hypoxic brain injury caused by prolonged exposure to extreme altitude without adequate protection or supplemental oxygen. Marcus's channel was permanently suspended following investigation by authorities and YouTube's policy enforcement team. The platform cited violations related to dangerous activities and misrepresentation of risk. The helicopter crew faced no legal consequences as weather conditions had made rescue operations objectively impossible. Derek Sullivan required psychiatric treatment for trauma related to witnessing and inadvertently documenting his friend's death, while on the North Ridge, a solo climber pushed onward, disregarding both storm warnings and guide advice. It was May 8, 2017, at Camp 3 on Mount Everest's North Ridge, elevation 25,600 feet. The early morning was cold and windy, with climbers checking tents and equipment, while others moved cautiously across the ice and rock. Norah Kessler, 28, had organized a personal climbing project to attempt the Everest summit, hiring Ongchiring Sherpa and his team for $45,000 to provide guidance and support. She insisted on completing sections of the climb independently, often refusing advice from the Sherpas about weather conditions, route selection, and safety protocols in order to test her personal limits. Her pack sat next to the tent, straps loosely coiled, High-altitude mountaineering above 25,000 feet requires constant support systems, including shared body heat and coordinated decision-making about weather windows and evacuation procedures. Standard expedition practice involves climbers remaining within visual or radio contact, especially during summit pushes, due to the rapid onset of medical emergencies at altitude. Climbers typically travel in groups with redundant safety equipment, communication devices, and predetermined emergency protocols. The death zone environment creates rapid physiological deterioration, including impaired judgment, hypothermia, and altitude sickness that can prove fatal within hours without proper support. Medical literature cited in the post-incident review emphasized that cognitive impairment at this elevation often prevents accurate self-assessment of risk. Kessler had refused additional support, carrying only basic supplies and declining supplemental safety equipment recommended by her guides. A thin layer of frost covered the surface of the platform. The confrontation began when Ong Chiring advised immediate descent due to approaching storm systems that weather services had predicted would bring sustained winds exceeding 60 miles per hour and temperatures dropping below -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Satellite forecasts available to expedition leaders indicated a narrowing weather window, with instability increasing earlier than initially projected. Kessler accused the team of sabotaging her summit attempt and demanded they continue climbing, despite conditions that experienced mountaineers recognized as potentially fatal. When the Sherpas refused to proceed, citing safety protocols and their responsibility to other clients, Kessler threatened to withhold payment and post negative reviews that would damage their guiding reputation. She ordered them to leave her equipment and descend immediately. Ong Chiring attempted to convince Kessler to descend with them, but she remained on site. After 40 minutes of discussion, the Sherpas departed at 2:30 p.m., leaving Kessler alone with 4 days of food, limited fuel, and basic communication equipment. Her camera recorded 6 days of activity, showing signs consistent with hypothermia, dehydration, and altitude sickness. The storm arrived 6 hours earlier than forecasted, trapping Kessler in her tent with winds reaching 75 miles per hour. Her phone recorded 6 days of activity, showing impaired coordination, slurred speech, and decreased responsiveness. The final entry occurred shortly before she lost consciousness. Rescue teams reached her location on May 14th after the weather cleared. Access was delayed due to avalanche risk and unstable ice conditions along the fixed lines. The coroner determined death resulted from severe hypothermia, dehydration, and hypoxic brain injury caused by prolonged exposure to extreme altitude and weather conditions. The tent partially collapsed from the force of the wind. Ong Chiring faced no legal consequences as investigators determined the Sherpas had followed established safety protocols by refusing to continue in dangerous conditions. The incident prompted new regulations requiring expedition leaders to maintain communication with abandoned clients and report emergencies to rescue authorities regardless of client preferences. Policy would change, but it could not rewrite the events of those 6 days. Equipment left behind sat undisturbed on the ridge. Even as higher up, another climber balanced on a narrow ledge, filming their ascent in the thin Himalayan air. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now